Silent arrival. In the 53rd cycle of the Galactic Consortium's expansion era, alarm bells rang across the Frontier Observation Network. For the first time in 3 centuries, something impossible appeared at the edge of regulated space. A human vessel. Senior Monitor Zelkrav leaned forward at his station, 6 appendages moving in perfect coordination across the luminescent control panels. His species, the Vrian, had served as the Consortium's primary detection specialists for generations, their multifaceted eyes capable of processing visual data at speeds unmatched by most sentient races. Verification complete, Zelkrav announced, voice vibrating through his speech chamber. Pattern matches archived records. Human design, Terran origin. The command center of Outpost Sigma 9 fell silent. Humans were supposed to be extinct, or at least that was the official position of the Consortium after the Great Severance. Their home system had been quarantined for over 200 years, and no transmissions had breached the isolation barrier in all that time. How is this possible? First Commander Tekka demanded, her scaled skin flaring blue with agitation. The quarantine field has never been breached. It wasn't breached, Zelkrav responded, 4 eyes fixed on the incoming data while the other 2 monitored the ship's approach vector. The vessel emerged from uncharted space, not from the quarantine zone. It must have been out here all this time. The dark ship moved with deliberate slowness, its hull absorbing rather than reflecting sensor suites. Where most vessels in the Consortium shimmered with energy fields and identification beacons, this one remained a shadow, a silhouette against the stars. Size estimate, 1.7 kilometers in length. Configuration matches archive designation, Dreadnought class. Weapons status, unknown. Unable to penetrate interior shielding. First Commander Tekka's color deepened to a worried indigo. Alert Central Command. Priority Alpha. Prepare evacuation protocols. Word spread quickly across the 17 major species of the Consortium. Emergency councils convened as ancient contingency plans were dusted off. Veterans of the diplomatic court who had specialized in pre-severance human relations were called out of retirement. Most importantly, Admiral Varrock of the Ascendancy Defense Fleet was summoned from the outer colonies. Admiral Varrock was among the few living Consortium members who had actually met humans before the severance. As his flagship approached Outpost Sigma 9, the ancient Caldraxian studied the visual feed of the human vessel with a mixture of dread and fascination. They always built their ships like predators, he observed to his aide-de-camp. Function over form, but with an unmistakable message in the design. The ship has made no aggressive movements. Admiral, his aide noted. It doesn't need to, Varrock replied. Its presence alone is the message. Varrock's memories of humans were complicated. Brilliant problem solvers, but dangerously unpredictable. Their civilization had advanced at an alarming rate compared to the careful, measured progress of Consortium species. While most races took millennia to move from planetary travel to interstellar capability, humans had made the leap in less than 2 centuries. And then there were the rumors about what happened before the severance, the technologies they had begun to develop, the lines they had crossed. The official records had been heavily redacted, but Varrock had seen enough to understand why the Consortium Council had been so eager to establish the quarantine. We're receiving a transmission request from Outpost Sigma 9, his communications officer reported. The human vessel has initiated contact. Varrock straightened his posture, the plates along his spine shifting into formal alignment. Accept. The view screen flickered, and for the first time in centuries, a human face appeared on a Consortium communication channel. The figure was female, with dark skin and silver-streaked hair pulled back in a tight configuration. Her uniform was unfamiliar, bearing none of the insignia Varrock remembered from pre-severance encounters. This is Captain Ilara Santos of the Earth vessel Prometheus, she stated, her voice steady and authoritative. We request dialogue with Consortium representatives. Varrock stepped forward. This is Admiral Varrock of the Ascendancy Defense Fleet. Your presence here violates the terms of the Severance Treaty. Explain yourself. The human's expression remained unchanged, but something in her eyes, those uniquely human eyes, hardened. The treaty was not of our making, Admiral. It was imposed while we were indisposed. I have been authorized to inform the consortium that circumstances have changed. The quarantine is no longer sustainable. By whose authority? Varrock demanded. By necessity, she replied simply. The Prometheus carries representatives from the Terran Continuity Government. We need to speak with your council. Behind Varrock, his command staff exchanged nervous glances. The arrival of one human vessel was concerning enough, but the implication that there was an organized human government operating beyond consortium awareness was deeply alarming. Your request will be forwarded to Central Command, Varrock said carefully. In the meantime, maintain your current position. Any attempt to approach consortium worlds will be considered hostile action. Captain Santos inclined her head slightly. Understood. We will wait. But not indefinitely, Admiral. Time is a factor. The transmission ended, leaving Varrock with a sense of foreboding. In all his years of service, he had never encountered a situation like this. The consortium had built its stability on predictability and careful diplomacy. Humans had always been the wild variable in that equation. Orders, Admiral. His second-in-command asked. Maintain distance, but establish a perimeter. No vessels approach without authorization. Varrock turned away from the view screen. And find me every surviving record of human behavior during crisis negotiations. I want to know what we're dealing with. While the consortium scrambled to respond, the Prometheus remained motionless, a dark reminder of a past the galaxy had tried to forget. Its very design seemed anachronistic compared to the current consortium aesthetic, angular where modern ships were curved, utilitarian where others emphasized elegance. Deep scans revealed little about its capabilities, but energy readings suggested power sources far more advanced than what humans had possessed at the time of the severance. This was not a relic. It was something new, built with technologies the consortium had no record of. 3 standard days passed before the Consortium Council authorized direct engagement. A delegation was assembled, led by Varrock himself, to board a diplomatic shuttle and approach the Prometheus. As they neared the imposing vessel, details became visible that sensors had missed, scorch marks along the hull, evidence of recent repairs, and most concerning, weapons systems unlike any in the consortium database. They've seen combat, Varrock murmured to the senior diplomatic attaché beside him. Recently. Against whom? The attaché wondered. There have been no reports of engagement with unknown forces in any charted region. That's what worries me, Varrock replied. The shuttle was directed to a docking bay that opened like a wound in the side of the great ship. As they passed through the atmospheric barrier, Varrock noted the efficiency of the design. Minimal ornamentation, every element serving a purpose. The bay itself could accommodate vessels 3 times the size of their shuttle, suggesting the Prometheus was designed to carry fighter craft or smaller support ships. Armed humans awaited them, their posture alert but not overtly threatening. Their uniforms were dark gray with blue accents, and their weapons looked sleek and compact compared to the bulky arms Varrock remembered from pre-severance encounters. Captain Santos greeted them personally, flanked by officers whose bearing suggested extensive military training. Up close, Varrock could see the weariness in her eyes, belying her composed demeanor. Admiral Varrock, she acknowledged. Thank you for coming. The Prometheus has traveled a long way for this meeting. From where exactly? Varrock inquired, his translator implant converting his native Caldraxian speech. A place called Sanctuary, she answered. Our home for the past 2 centuries, beyond the Perseus Veil. The delegation exchanged glances. The Perseus Veil was at the edge of charted space, a region avoided due to severe gravitational anomalies that made navigation nearly impossible. You've been out there all this time? The diplomatic attaché asked incredulously. Some of us, Captain Santos replied. After the severance, humanity split. Most remained in the Sol system under quarantine. A fraction escaped before the barriers were established. We've been building, preparing. For what? Varrock asked. Santos looked him directly in the eyes, an action that many consortium species considered confrontational, but that humans used to convey sincerity. For what's coming, Admiral? The same thing that forced us to develop the technologies that frightened the consortium into quarantining us in the first place. She gestured toward a corridor. Please, follow me. There's something you need to see. As they walked through the ship, Varrock noticed subtle details that told a story. The ship was designed for long-term deployment, with hydroponic sections visible through some viewports, exercise facilities, and what appeared to be educational centers for young humans. This wasn't just a warship, it was a lifeboat. They arrived at a secure chamber dominated by a holographic display. Captain Santos activated it with a gesture, and a three-dimensional map of the galaxy appeared, with particular regions highlighted in pulsing red. 3 months ago, our deep space monitoring network detected these anomalies, she explained. They match patterns we observed before the severance, patterns that preceded the emergence of what we call the void entities. The delegation stared at the display in confusion. We have no record of such entities, the science attaché stated. No, Santos agreed grimly, because we contained the first incursion before it reached consortium space, at great cost. Varrock's scales rippled with sudden understanding. That's why you developed the technologies that alarmed us. You were preparing for war. Not just preparing, Admiral, fighting it. Captain Santos manipulated the display, zooming in on one of the red zones. The entities exist in a dimensional state slightly offset from normal space. They perceive organic life as energy to be consumed. Earth was their first target in this galaxy, perhaps because our technologies accidentally pierced the barrier between our reality and theirs. The display showed grainy footage of something vast and formless, a darkness that seemed to absorb light around it as it descended on what appeared to be a human colony. The scene shifted to defensive measures being deployed, weapons that distorted space itself, forcing the darkness back. The consortium saw our weapons development as a threat to galactic stability, Santos continued. You didn't understand what we were fighting. The quarantine was a death sentence, forcing us to face the void alone. If this threat is real, Varrock began cautiously, why come to us now, after all this time? Captain Santos' expression turned grim. Because we're losing, Admiral. The void entities have adapted to our defenses. They're coming again, stronger than before. And this time, they won't stop with Earth. The entire galaxy is at risk, and humanity alone cannot stop them. The revelation hung in the air like a physical presence. If what Santos claimed was true, then the consortium's greatest fear, the return of humanity, might also be their only hope for survival. I need proof, Varrock stated firmly. Something that can be verified independently by our scientists. Of course, Santos nodded. We anticipated your skepticism. She produced a data crystal, offering it to the science attaché. This contains coordinates for a containment breach in uninhabited space. Send your own vessels, but equip them with the shielding specifications included in the data. Without it, your crews won't survive what they'll encounter. As the delegation prepared to depart, Varrock found himself facing a decision that would alter the course of galactic history. The threat described by Captain Santos seemed almost incomprehensible, yet the evidence presented was compelling. More importantly, the humans had clearly been preparing for this moment for generations. The Consortium Council will need time to deliberate, he informed Santos. Time is precisely what we don't have, Admiral, she replied. The Prometheus is just the first. More ships will follow. Humanity is emerging from exile, with or without consortium approval. We would prefer cooperation, but we will not watch another world fall as ours nearly did. As Varrock's shuttle detached from the Prometheus, he gazed back at the massive vessel. For centuries, the consortium had feared the return of humanity, imagining scenarios of revenge or conquest. Instead, they had returned as harbingers and defenders, bearing warnings of a threat beyond anything in consortium experience. The real question now was whether ancient fears would prevent the galaxy from accepting the help it desperately needed from the species it had once abandoned. Legacy of Earth. Admiral Verak faced the assembled Consortium Council, 17 representatives of the most powerful species in known space. The chamber hummed with tension as holographic projections of regional governors and military commanders filled the observer galleries. News of the human vessel had spread despite attempts at containment, and rumors multiplied by the hour. The evidence provided by the humans has been verified, Verak stated, his voice carrying throughout the vast chamber. Our science division confirmed the anomaly of the coordinates they provided. The shielding specifications were effective. Without them, the exploratory vessel would have been lost. Councillor Nembrak of the Ildirian hegemony leaned forward, membranous wings fluttering with agitation. One verified anomaly does not constitute a galactic threat, Admiral. This could be an elaborate deception. To what end? Verak challenged. If humans wanted revenge for the severance, they could have struck without warning. The Prometheus possesses technologies centuries beyond our current capabilities. Senior Counselor Phloxa, the eldest of the Varian contingent, raised a limb for attention. Our archives contain sealed records from pre-severance intelligence gathering. There were indeed reports of unusual phenomena affecting outlying human colonies shortly before diplomatic relations collapsed. A wave of murmurs swept through the chamber. Most council members were too young to have direct knowledge of that era. The severance had been declared by their predecessors, the details classified at the highest levels. I moved to temporarily suspend the quarantine protocols, Verak proposed. Allow a contingent of human representatives to present their case directly to this council. The debate raged for hours. Old fears competed with rational assessment of the situation. Finally, a compromise was reached. Captain Santos and 2 officers would be permitted to address the council, while the Prometheus remained at a designated holding position under surveillance. 3 days later, Captain Santos stood at the center of the council chamber. Beside her were her executive officer, Commander Jameson, a tall man with pale skin and cybernetic augmentations visible at his temples, and Science Director Kai Liang, whose calm demeanor belied the gravity of the presentation they were about to deliver. Counselors of the Galactic Consortium, Santos began. 237 years ago, humanity encountered an existential threat unlike anything our species had faced before. We called them the void entities, beings from a dimensional plane adjacent to our own, drawn to the unique electromagnetic signatures of advanced civilizations. Science Director Liang activated a holographic display showing a timeline of events, beginning with the first contact between humans and the consortium races and ending with the severance. As we expanded our presence in space, we inadvertently created tiers in the dimensional boundary, Liang explained. Our early FTL experiments generated specific resonance patterns that attracted the entity's attention. The first incursion occurred at our colony on Proxima Centauri. The display showed footage that made several council members recoil, amorphous darkness flowing through streets, engulfing structures and living beings alike. Where the darkness passed, nothing remained. We lost 80,000 colonists in 6 hours, Santos continued grimly. Our conventional weapons were useless. The entities exist partially outside our physical laws. Energy weapons passed through them, and physical munitions were absorbed. Commander Jameson stepped forward. Earth's research divisions worked at unprecedented speed to develop countermeasures. We created weapons that could affect cross-dimensional space, shields that could repel void energy, and detection systems to identify incursion points before they fully formed. These were the technologies that alarmed the consortium, Santos added. We understand your perspective. From the outside, it appeared that humanity had made a sudden, massive leap in military capability. What you didn't know was that we were fighting for our very existence. Councillor Drav of the Tellerate meritocracy raised a hand. If these entities were drawn to your technologies, why would developing even more advanced systems not exacerbate the problem? An excellent question, Liang acknowledged. We discovered that the entities were attracted to specific energy signatures, not simply technology itself. By modifying our fundamental approach to energy generation and transmission, we could become effectively invisible to them. The timeline advanced, showing the establishment of the quarantine barrier around Sol system and the years that followed. When the consortium imposed the severance, humanity was divided. Santos explained. Most remained in Sol system, continuing the fight behind the quarantine barrier. But some of us, descendants of outer colony evacuees, established sanctuary beyond the Perseus Veil, where natural gravitational distortions helped mask our presence. For 2 centuries, both branches of humanity have held the line, Commander Jameson continued. Earth itself developed the Aegis Network, a planetary shield system that has successfully repelled 17 major incursions. At Sanctuary, we focused on understanding the entity's nature and origins. And now, Senior Counselor Flock Siv inquired. Captain Santos' expression darkened. Now the entities have evolved. 3 months ago, they'd breached Earth's Aegis network for the first time, targeting our primary research facility in the Antarctic region. The attack pattern was different, more focused, almost strategic. Their learning. Science Director Liang manipulated the display, revealing a galactic map with spreading patterns of red. Our models predict that within 1 standard year, incursion events will begin in consortium space. Within 5 years, they will reach the core worlds. The quarantine didn't protect you. It only bought time. The council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Admiral Varrock studied the faces around him, noting the shift from skepticism to dread. What do you propose? Councillor Nembrak finally asked, earlier hostility replaced by reluctant attention. Alliance, Santos stated simply. Humanity has the experience and technology to combat the void entities, but we lack the resources and industrial capacity to shield an entire galaxy. The consortium has those resources, but lacks the specific knowledge needed to survive what's coming. Commander Jameson activated a new display showing schematics for defensive systems. We're prepared to share our void shield technology, dimensional stabilizers, and early warning networks. In exchange, we ask for an immediate end to the quarantine and full integration of human representatives into consortium defense planning. These technologies, the Telluric Counselor observed, they could be weaponized against conventional targets as well. Yes, Santos acknowledged without hesitation. They could. Just as your antimatter production facilities could be converted to produce planet killers, or your terraforming equipment repurposed for ecological warfare. All advanced technology carries risk. The question is whether you trust us enough to face a common threat. The debate continued through multiple sessions. Verification teams were dispatched to examine the anomalies at additional coordinates provided by the humans. Military analysts pored over the defensive technologies, looking for hidden threats or weaknesses. Through it all, the Prometheus remained in its designated holding position, a constant reminder of humanity's return. 2 weeks after the initial presentation, Captain Santos and her officers were summoned back to the council chamber for the final decision. The Consortium Council has reached a consensus, Senior Counselor Floxa announced. The evidence presented regarding the void entities has been deemed credible. The immediate threat they pose outweighs historical concerns regarding human technological development. A visible wave of relief passed over the human delegation. The severance treaty is hereby suspended, pending a full review. Earth representatives will be invited to participate in a joint defense initiative, with Admiral Varrock serving as liaison between consortium and human forces. As formal diplomatic channels were established between the consortium and both Earth and Sanctuary, Admiral Varrock found himself working closely with Captain Santos to coordinate the massive undertaking of galaxy-wide defense preparations. The Prometheus became the center of an expanding fleet as more human vessels emerged from beyond the Perseus Veil, each bringing specialists and technologies developed during their long exile. I still don't fully understand, Varrock admitted during a private meeting with Santos in his flagship's observation lounge. Why didn't humanity attempt to break the quarantine earlier? Your ships could have overcome our defenses. Santos gazed out at the stars, her reflection in the viewport looking momentarily distant. Breaking out was never the problem. Admiral, the quarantine actually helped contain the void entity's focus on Earth. We feared that by disrupting it, we might unleash them across the galaxy before we were ready. And you're ready now. No, she said honestly. But we're out of alternatives. The entities are evolving too quickly. Either we stand together, or we fall one by one. The first test of the Alliance came sooner than expected. A minor colony world in the Forzen system, far from the main consortium territories, reported unusual energy fluctuations. By the time the alert reached command channels, communications had already been lost with the colony's 15,000 inhabitants. A joint task force was assembled, with the Prometheus leading 3 consortium cruisers equipped with human-designed shielding. As they approached Forzen IV, sensors detected the telltale signs of a massive void incursion. Reality itself seemed to warp around the planet, light bending in impossible ways. It's worse than we anticipated, Captain Santos observed from the Prometheus's command center. The incursion is fully mature. Admiral Varrock, temporarily stationed aboard the human vessel, studied the tactical display with mounting concern. Can it be contained? Yes, but conventional evacuation is impossible. Anyone still alive on that surface is already doomed. Santos turned to her weapons officer. Prepare dimensional anchors. Full deployment pattern. The Prometheus launched a series of specialized satellites that took up positions around the planet. Once in place, they began emitting synchronized energy pulses that visibly affected the distortion field. The anchors stabilize local spacetime, Santos explained to Varrock. They won't save the planet, but they'll prevent the incursion from spreading to neighboring systems. And the colony? Varrock asked quietly. Santos' expression was grim. We contain, then we cauterize. Once the dimensional boundary is stabilized, we'll deploy a nova charge to collapse the incursion point. The planet will be destroyed, but the entity will be forced back to its own dimension. Varrock felt a chill despite the regulated temperature of the command center. The casual way Santos described the destruction of an entire world spoke volumes about what humanity had endured in its long war. There must be another option, he insisted. Commander Jameson, who had been monitoring communication channels, suddenly straightened. Captain, we're receiving a signal from the surface. Faint, but definitely colonial emergency protocols. Santos and Varrock exchanged shocked glances. Survivors? Varrock asked. Impossible, Santos murmured. No one survives direct contact with the entities. The signal is coming from a deep mining complex, Jameson reported. Heavy shielding, possibly natural mineral deposits that the entities can't easily penetrate. How many? Santos demanded. Signal indicates approximately 2,000 colonists sheltering in the facility. Captain Santos faced a tactical nightmare. The anchors were working, but wouldn't hold indefinitely. The longer they delayed the nova charge, the greater the risk of the incursion breaking containment. Yet destroying the planet meant condemning 2,000 souls to death. To Varrock's surprise, Santos didn't hesitate. Reconfigure the anchors to create a stable corridor to the mining complex. Prepare evacuation shuttles with enhanced shielding. Captain, her tactical officer protested. Standard protocol calls for immediate neutralization. The risk is mine to take, Lieutenant. Santos cut him off. We don't sacrifice the few to save the many, not when we have a choice. That's what separates us from the void. The next 6 hours were among the most tense of Varrock's long career. Human shuttles, escorted by consortium fighters, braved the increasingly unstable atmosphere of Forzen IV. The dimensional anchors strained to maintain the evacuation corridor as void energy pulsed against the artificial boundary. One by one, shuttles returned to the waiting ships, packed with terrified colonists who had spent days hiding in darkness as unspeakable forces consumed their world above them. Many were injured, some critically, but the medical bays worked tirelessly to stabilize them. The final shuttle had just cleared the planet's atmosphere when the anchors began to fail. "Nova charge ready," the weapons officer reported. "All vessels clear minimum safe distance," Santos confirmed. "Deploy on my mark." Now, the specialized warhead plunged toward the planet's surface. On impact, it didn't explode in the conventional sense. Instead, it created an inverted dimensional field that collapsed upon itself with devastating force. Forzen IV shattered from within, the void entity trapped at the center of the implosion. From the Prometheus's observation deck, Varrock and Santos watched the distant flash as an entire world ceased to exist. "We saved 2,000, Santos said quietly, "out of 15,000. Without you, it would have been 0, Varrock reminded her. And this system would have been just the beginning. In the aftermath of Forzen, resistance to human integration into consortium defense planning evaporated. The reality of the threat had been demonstrated in the most visceral way possible. More importantly, humanity's willingness to risk its own safety to save consortium citizens had made an impression on even the most skeptical council members. Over the following months, a new order began to take shape. Human scientists worked alongside consortium engineers to adapt void-shielding technology to thousands of worlds. Early warning networks extended throughout inhabited space. Most significantly, the quarantine around Earth was officially lifted, allowing the two branches of humanity to reunite after centuries apart. 1 year after the arrival of the Prometheus, Admiral Varrock stood on the observation deck of Earth's orbital command station, gazing down at the birthplace of humanity. The planet bore visible scars from its long war. Vast areas remained uninhabitable, and the famous Aegis network created a faint blue shimmer in the upper atmosphere. Yet there was also renewal, new cities rising from the ruins of the old, oceans gradually healing from the environmental damage of early void incursions. "It's strange," Captain Santos observed, joining him at the viewport. "For centuries, we feared the consortium would finish what the void entities started, the complete extinction of humanity. And you feared we would one day emerge from quarantine seeking revenge. Instead, we need each other to survive," Varrock concluded. "Perhaps that's the universe's way of teaching wisdom to proud species." Santos smiled slightly. "My ancestor kept a journal during the first incursion. She wrote that the greatest threat wasn't the entities themselves, but the isolation they created, the feeling that humanity faced the darkness alone. Beyond Earth, the combined fleet of human and consortium vessels maintained their vigilant watch. The void incursions continued, but now each one was met with coordinated response, each attack adding to their collective understanding of the enemy. In the end, humanity's return hadn't heralded destruction, as the consortium had feared for centuries. Instead, it had brought something unexpected, hope in the face of a darkness that threatened all life everywhere. The lone human warship that had entered Imperial space hadn't come as a conqueror, but as the vanguard of salvation.